You know, when I first started learning how to train, you know, I learned, as you said you did, you know, you have a muscle that you want to work. You want to address the muscle.
Sure.
And to do that, you have to understand some basics about anatomy, origin, insertion, action, usually concentric muscle action.
Right.
Is there a place for that? I mean,
well, excuse me. It's interesting to bring that up because, yeah, the books told us one way. We were taught that isolated way, that bodybuilding mentality way. It worked for us for a while. We used machines. Nautilus did great things for us. Joe Weider did great things for the industry. We kind of cut our teeth on that isolated mentality. As an athlete, even though I did it, I still felt something was missing. I didn't know what, but I felt something was missing. And to be very honest with you, back in those days, I felt, well, it's in the book, this guy wrote it, this guy must know, I'm going to do it this way. It still didn't feel right, but then I started, and I remember adding some calisthenics to things that I did, not knowing back then that it was really kind of an integrated movement, but I know that these were calisthenics that enhanced movement, and it goes back to my athletic days, and things started to feel a little bit better. Back about maybe 15 years ago or so, when I started studying human movement, I went from that isolated single joint, single plane of motion mentality. Everything became integrated. I couldn't do a chest press anymore. It had to be standing using tubes or cable machines because this is how the body moves. And that's all that I did. And I saw great results with it, but there was still something missing, Bobby. I couldn't put my hand on it, but there was still something missing.
So you went from sociology to physiology, cardiac physiology, and then now you're getting into integrated movement. Who influenced your thinking? What was the turning point? Was it something or someone? What was the insight?
Well, there's a gentleman who I'll get to in a moment that was a huge influence for me and is still my mentor and friend. But let me go back to this paradigm shift for a moment where I went from one end of the spectrum to the other. That other end of the spectrum still didn't feel right. And then over the course of the last few years, I've been blending the two. Because there is no bad exercise, Bobby. I've heard too many times in our business, this is good, this is bad, this is the only way to do it, this is my way to do it, this is the protocol, this is contraindicated. No, it's based on what is indicated, what is contraindicated for the client. That's where we have to learn how to appraise, how to assess, how to evaluate, however you want to put it.
Not to stop you there, but before we say something's good or bad, we have to understand who are we dealing with, what are we trying to accomplish?
We've got to know what their needs, their objectives, what their limitations, what their thresholds, what their compensations are to indicate what is good and what is bad. So traditional exercises back then, and I tell trainers to think, to develop a toolbox mentality. To become exercise brokers, have these different tools by which they can use the tools, and the exercise is a tool, and the different tools such as dumbbells and med balls and stability balls and Dynadiscs and whatever else there is out there. They're tools. You enslave the tools, don't be enslaved by them. But use an exercise. Good. The issue is our industry looks at what and hows, but don't look at necessarily whens and whys. What I mean is they may see somebody with a knee problem or a back problem. They say, what's wrong? You got a back problem. What am I going to do? How am I going to fix it? I'm going to do this, but I'm not sure when to do it, and I'm not sure why I'm doing it. And the why is where the industry needs to lead.
This is such good information. So I'm going to ask you, give us an example.
Well,
when you say back problem,
let's say somebody comes in with a back problem. Years ago, what we used to do is it just so happens we have a lumbar spine.
And you thought we didn't come prepared for props, did you?
Years ago, when somebody came in with a back problem, we were told avoid rotation. We got the referral from the physical therapist or from the physician and say, do spine or back stabilization exercises. Avoid rotation. Well, in fact, we've got 144 muscles at the back. About 120 or so run on an angle. When you see muscles that run on an angle, it says rotate me. So I believe what they're saying is, yes, avoid rotation through the back, especially the lumbar spine, but because it only has about 2 degrees of rotation from L1 to L4. L5 has about 5 degrees or so of
Why
rotation.
is that structurally?
Well, when we look at the articulating facets, these are almost like horse blinders right in here. And it doesn't allow for a lot of transverse plane or rotational movement. Where you look at the thoracic spine, these facets kind of stick out this way rather than this way. I call them Shrek ears in the thoracic spine.
So structure tells us a lot about function.
Structure is going to dictate function, and function is dictated by structure. What we have to understand is that the lumbar spine doesn't like rotation. However, the lumbar spine is greatly affected by what goes on at the pelvis. It's greatly affected by what goes on at the thoracic spine. Both of those are greatly affected by what goes on in the foot. We have to create the environment for our clients to become successful by knowing what happens down at the foot, by knowing how the foot reaction is going to create an environment for the pelvis to become successful. If you have good mobility through the pelvis, where the pelvis goes, the low back will follow. Get the rotation through the pelvis, get the rotation through the thoracic spine to reduce the rotation through the lumbar spine, and the lumbar spine says thank you.